I felt like we were in a position to win, and we pushed them to a Game 7 in their building.
That's the Scotty migraine game, right?
Yeah.
Heading into the 1989 to 1990 season, the Chicago Bulls were coming off of their second straight year being eliminated at the hands of the Detroit Pistons. Chicago had also fired Doug Collins from his head coaching position and promoted Phil Jackson to lead the team moving forward. It was a controversial move at the time, but ultimately a brilliant one that would pay off almost immediately. Along with that, Scottie Pippen was a bit of a slow bloomer, but was now poised to have his breakout season. He improved all of his averages across the board and experienced his first season as an NBA All-Star. This would be the first time Jordan would play alongside of another All-Star. Behind the lead of Michael Jordan and his monstrous numbers, the Bulls won 55 games, which was the second most in franchise history. They certainly weren't favorites in the East heading into the postseason, but they had greatly improved, and it was starting to look like they might actually be ready to finally dethrone their rivals, the reigning Detroit Pistons. After getting a gentleman's sweep over the Bucks and 76ers in the first two rounds, the Bulls were meeting the Pistons for the third straight year, this time in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was a hotly contested series, but at the end of Game 6, they were tied at 3 games apiece, with the series heading back to Detroit to decide who goes to the NBA Finals, where it was anyone's game. There were two major issues for Chicago heading into that 7th game. The first was the absence of their starting point guard, John Paxson. He injured his right ankle in the third quarter of Game 6, and from that point on, his season was done. John was one of the Bulls' best perimeter shooters, and to say the Bulls would miss that aspect of his skill set in Game 7 would be a massive understatement. More on that later. Their second major issue was the well-documented Scottie Pippen migraine. Pippen described his symptoms as seeing double, blurred vision, and numbing pain. Unfortunately, when the game started, Pippen was unable to make a positive impact on either side of the court, shooting only 1 for 10 from the field for a grand total of 2 points, while simultaneously being outproduced by his defensive assignment, Dennis Rodman, who put in 13 points and 9 rebounds on a near-perfect 6 of 7 shooting from the field. Jordan was playing the biggest game of his career up to that point without his number 2 option and without his starting point guard, who was a great perimeter threat as well. Given the circumstances, MJ would have to have a tremendous game for the Bulls just to keep things interesting, and a great game is what he had. Despite the elite Detroit defense, Jordan poured in 31 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds on 48% shooting. Sadly, this was nowhere close to enough, because it wasn't just Pippen who appeared to be having a migraine, but it almost seemed like every other Bulls player did as well. Horace Grant was the only Bull other than Jordan to score in double digits, and he shot a terrible 3 of 17 from the field. As I mentioned earlier, Pippen shot 1 of 10, Greg Hodges shot 3 of 13, Bill Cartwright shot 3 of 9, and BJ Armstrong shot 1 of 8. All of the Bulls other than Jordan shot a combined 23.8% from the field. That wasn't just terrible, but collectively, it was one of the worst performances from a supporting cast in playoff history. Watching the game again recently was absolutely brutal. The Chicago role players couldn't hit a perimeter shot to save their life. It's remarkable that Jordan even managed to get 9 assists out of that group, considering the fact that the majority of his teammates' shots were bricks. If Chicago had made just an average amount of their jumpers, Jordan would have easily had 15 plus assists that game. As I said earlier, John Paxson was missed quite dearly. When you factor in Jordan's assists and points, he orchestrated a whopping 67% of all of his team's points. It wasn't just offensively where Jordan must have felt alone, but defensively as well. Jordan locked up Joe Dumars, who was the team's second best player and their number 2 scoring option, while pretty much every other Piston who played major minutes was very productive. Dumars shot only 2 of 7 from the field and had only 7 points, while Isaiah Thomas had 21, Rodman had 13, Lambeer had 13, Sally had 14, and Mark Aguirre had 15. The Pistons outside of Dumars shot a tremendous 54% from the field. Despite MJ's best efforts, the Pistons were ahead comfortably for most of the second half and ultimately won the game with a score of 93-74. The Pistons then went on to be the Portland Trail Blazers in the 1990 NBA Finals. It's crazy to look back and see that if the Bulls hadn't had multiple extremely untimely injuries and if Jordan had even just a bit of help, there's a strong likelihood he would have won 7 championship rings instead of 6. This game is one of the huge reasons why I never agreed with the narrative that Jordan started winning championships when he started trusting his teammates. Jordan had plenty of times early in his career where he looked to facilitate and trusted his teammates with the game on the line. He averaged 7 assists over the entirety of the 1990 playoffs, which is extremely high for a shooting guard, especially during that era. In that deciding 7th game specifically, Jordan managed 9 assists with teammates who shot 23%. Despite the fact that that game had a giant magnitude, Jordan frequently kept looking to his teammates even though they kept letting him down. He often relied on them and they still lost. 1 year later, the Bulls as a whole, not just Jordan, came back stronger, healthier, and more prepared. They swept the Pistons in the 91 playoffs and the championships started stacking up from then on. So no, Jordan didn't start winning championships when he started trusting his teammates. Jordan started winning championships when he finally got an adequate supporting cast that's necessary for winning the championship. Let me know in the comments section if you think the Bulls would have won Game 7 if Pippen and Paxson were healthy, or if you think the Pistons would have won regardless just because they're that good of a team. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.